everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're Performance Agile. I'm Eric.
And I'm Vince.
And today's topic of conversation, making the transition.
So today's topic of discussion is making the transition. And for me personally, this is one of the most interesting, it's one of the most critical discussions that we're going to have of all of the things on the board. And as we have, we're going to, we've picked a quote for today that applies to the conversation at hand. And that quote for today is, unsuccessful people make decisions based on their current situation. Successful people make decisions based on where they want to be. So we're talking about companies large and small making the decision to transition to Agile.
So the quote that you picked, successful people make decisions on where they want to be, couldn't be more applicable, as you said, to this topic of conversation, because you have to understand where you currently are and you have to understand where you want to be.
Absolutely.
So whenever we start deciding or figuring out how do we make this transition, one state change to another state change, where do you even begin in all this mess? How do you even feasibly get started?
Right. Well, that is the $64 question, right? When the company decides, and we say the company as a general term, insert company, organization, the leadership, the executive suite, shareholders, we're talking everyone who is involved in the company is going to be involved in the success of this decision. It will end up impacting people in every sense of the word, hopefully in a positive way, which is why we've covered where we've covered today, leading up to today's discussion. You have to understand all of the things that are involved, all of the people that are involved. And it's not an easy decision to make. It's not a quick overnight thing that's going to happen. As a matter of fact, another quote that just comes to mind is another one from Steve Jobs. I can't seem to not quote this guy. He's quoted as saying that it's always interesting that the overnight sensations have taken years to get there. It's just that the public all of a sudden sees this great company or this great product, but it's taken a lot of trial, a lot of error, a lot of learning, a lot of experimentation over years to get there before they've reached a point where people consider it to be a value or success, right? Every company who decides to make the transition to Agile is going to experience that. A lot of companies and a lot of consulting companies have been brought in to Fortune 500 companies to do this activity, to get the company started on their journey to being more agile. Here's where I think a lot of companies with the best of intentions have missed the ball, either on the consulting side or in the organization, maybe a little bit of both. If the understanding of the complexity to begin with isn't fully understood by everyone in the C-suite or the executive board, if the shareholders don't even understand what's going on, if they want to know, hey, what's going on in our company? Because sometimes things will slow down before they can speed up. Everyone has to be read into the complexity of making the transition to Agile. You have to also fully prepare your infrastructure, your human resources people, your finance people. Right now your company is based on a structure of reporting, if you will, incentives that are involved with performance reviews. So how people, if you have a bonus or incentive program in your current company, how is that going to be affected if maybe we change your role? Well, does your pay change with your role change and your responsibilities change? Because we are introducing new roles to your existing culture with these agile frameworks and these processes. So the finance and the human resources side of the house have to be working together, have to be fully prepared to execute from that perspective. Another very important aspect of this is, and I think we've talked about it, you don't just spin up a team. So we're gonna spin up a team. We're gonna do Scrum. I think we talked about that, and then watch over their shoulder. There might be 7 team members, but you've got 10 people looking over their shoulder, right? That's not what we want either. So we want to lean out the process. So what does that process look like? I know that there's been a lot of great examples over the years that if we take, vertical slices of a piece of the company and we experiment with everyone who's involved in the ideation of this product or service and how we refine and decompose those ideas down to the team and into the hands of a customer. It's not a big bang. It's not a cookie cutter out of the box approach, because that's not going to work. It may have worked once somewhere, but I assure you it's not going to work that way everywhere. So you have to take a little piece of your organization and you have to define all the people who are going to be involved, the least number of people, I might add, and experiment with it before you decide, okay, here's where we need to make some adjustments. This seemed to work pretty well, or this worked great and this didn't work at all. And then you tweak and you hone that from the business side of the house all the way through into technology, all the way into operations. Everyone, you've got to have that a smooth flow, because a lot of these processes are about flow. Right? That's where we get the fast. That's where you get the value and the quality is that flow is a work of art. It's a combination of art and science in this whole entire decision to go and make this transition. But you cannot just do a big bang out of the box, especially if you're a big, huge, Fortune 100 company or 500 company. You have to experiment, and then over time, what makes sense. Be logical, and again, the leadership that's involved in this is critical. Empower the people that are involved. Set them up for success. Give them everything that they need, and get out of their way. Remember, you hired these people because you thought that they were smart. You wanted them to be brilliant. You wanted them to make you and the company successful. Well, what are we doing to make them brilliant and successful? That's all part of it. So get out of their way. Stop asking them for reports. Don't look over their shoulder. Don't tell them how to do their job. All of these things, we talked about culture and just everything, like the whole agile mindset and the culture and the leadership involvement. This decision right here, it embodies all of that. So when you decide to actually go and do it, you have to be fully read in. You have to fully understand all of the intricacies and the complexities of what's involved. So given all of those things that I just mentioned, Eric's question was, so where do you start? Well, it starts at the executive level, right? They have to have that understanding. So there's a certain amount of training that needs to be prepared and delivered to those people so that they understand all of those things. If they haven't received the same type of training so that they're all on the same page, then that is what I would recommend. So get everybody on the same page. So level set that baseline of understanding so that you can start making the decisions moving forward from that point. And so as you go and you bring people in, again, you don't have to bring everybody in. So if we're going to take a thin slice of the company, Start there. And again, so getting everybody read in and getting everyone on board, it starts with an understanding. Understanding comes with a little bit of training and some background, right? Getting everybody on the same page. And we'll just continue to work through, that value stream or that product stream. Pick your term, whatever you prefer, until we get an idea of what that team composition might look like. So if we're picking a product or a service, we're not just going to arbitrarily say, well, it should be Scrum, or it's not going to be Scrum at all. We're just going to do Kanban all the way down, through. Let's not worry about that yet. But let's make sure that we understand the people that are involved. Once we understand the people that are involved and what that composition of those roles and skills and responsibilities look like, and we get everybody in agreement and we get everyone on the same page, and now we want to try to execute on something. So it is a process. So you start at the top, you get that understanding, you start making some decisions just in time, just enough as you go, just like we would in product development. It's in my opinion, it's essentially the same thing. Getting the right people involved, getting that right amount of support, understanding is critical. Leadership has to understand all the way, the entire process, all the way through. And their support is absolutely critical. And then, of course, you have, as we get into the frameworks, but the key people that are involved, we want to make sure that we know who it is that we're looking for and what those roles and responsibilities will entail and how that will look. It will take some planning and preparation and some trial and error. And then from there, as you experiment and you achieve some success, that's where you start to expand out into the rest of the company a little bit at a time. Again, this is just my opinion, but I have, I believe, enough experiences to where, through myself and through others, where I think that is where everyone should start when they decide to make their transition. Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah, so my experience, as he mentioned, does start with the executive level. It starts with the C-suites, those types. Like if you have a CFO, CTO, CIO title, that's where this all begins. I believe I mentioned in the last video that one of the main barriers to a successful transformation is whoever controls the money. Where is the money? Where does the money go? Mm-hmm. Corporate America has a responsibility to its shareholders to make money. And part of reading in the shareholders to this is, hey, we're going to try something different. You might notice that product delivery is disrupted for a little bit of time as we make a transition or a state change. The revenue that you would expect to see on our earnings and balance statements might not look like you would expect because we're making a change. And like you said, everyone's got to be read in. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got to allow for that. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about the time that a transition like this makes, I can't stress enough that a year at a minimum even is super generous for a large organization. When it comes to these activities, when it comes to the transition in and of itself, again, it's not cheap, it's not quick, it's not something that's going to be done overnight. Right. It is going to take time. You have to allow for failure. You have to allow for learning. You have to allow for the new process to mature, and you have to take those lessons learned. Like you said, you got to experiment. Mm-hmm. And part of the leadership education has to be the relationship with the people that are building the product. It is no longer, this is what I need you to do, but it's also, how can I empower you? How can I get you to a place where you are now able to execute and deliver on that product or that value stream to be successful, right? It takes it from your traditional command and control style of leadership to servant leadership. And right. That is not something a lot of people are comfortable with, but.
Yeah. So take, for example, when we're saying, you take a thin slice and you get everybody trained and ready to go, that might sound easy enough. but I don't know if you've experienced this. I have personally witnessed this where, large companies with complex infrastructures, and some of them are old infrastructures. We're talking mainframes in some cases. Some are transitioning, to cloud-based services where, okay, so we're going to take, a very complex infrastructure, and we're going to suddenly decide to change the way our processes are supporting the product that is housed in this particular infrastructure. Well, in some cases, I've seen companies say, well, we're going to upgrade our entire infrastructure and we're going to do it agile. Well, that can be very disruptive. So if you think you've planned it out and you haven't identified all of these things, or the rest of your culture and your organizational structure around this change isn't part of your infrastructure upgrade, so we're going to try to execute it a different way, but everything else is going to stay the same, you might run into some challenges. Maybe it's a product that we're going to upgrade. Well, what are all of the things that are involved if we're going to upgrade our architecture and the product and our software stack? Well, do we need people with different skills? Okay, so what does that team composition look like? How many teams do we need? What are the dependencies that we have with this new product with the company's legacy products? How are we going to organize this thin slice of the organization to be successful without causing the most disruption in the rest of the company? These are also the things that need to be carefully thought out before somebody decides we're just going to try this, or we're going to do this rather. I don't even think they use the word try in some cases. We're just going to do it. And then, all right, make it happen, report back. Let's monitor the progress on this with I think, unrealistic expectations of success.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you seen that?
I have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've worked at companies where they have tried an agile transformation either at the incorrect level, or like you said, not everybody's on board. When I say incorrect level, not all the executives were on board, or it wasn't done with the entire thin slice of a company. It was just a single vertical tower business segment, you name it. But like finance wasn't on board, HR wasn't on board. So one segment of the company was just like, we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
Maybe ops wasn't involved, but
yeah, we got to remember ops, right? They always get excluded.
Ops does. You can't exclude ops. Otherwise, what's the point? Your software is not going into production any quicker.
Right.
You've made this really expensive state change just to have, potential increments of software just sitting around not doing anything.
Right. Let's not create unnecessary shelfware because we can't get it into production, right?
But the experience is that one organization or one vertical or one segment makes the decision at a lower level rather than at the executive level. They don't have all that buy-in, and they say, we're going to make a state change, and it's at the team level. Mm-hmm. So they have scrum teams, they've got squads, they've got whatever, you name it, just regular software development teams that have their specializations and not cross-functional. And they start working, and they start iterating water, scrum, fall. They start iterating through a complete list of requirements that can't change because the front door process doesn't allow for it, right? They have that strict finance must fund all business cases or business initiatives, and they have to go through architecture design requirements for features or epics, you name it.
And we are going to talk more about that when we set up our product delivery model. Those very things, after the decision is made and everybody's ready to start executing, well, this is part of that decision process, and we're going to lay out what some of that looks like.
Right, but you're asking if I've seen that decision made, and that is also part of it.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
like you said, where do you start? Start at the top. You got to get all that crucial buy-in. You have to have that crucial understanding of these are all of the processes that are going to have to change. These are all of the tools that are going to have to change. Mm-hmm. Our people have to change. Our leadership has to change. And we got to educate.
Have to educate.
You have to educate. But like you said, when you start experimenting, you got to educate those that are involved a little bit more deeply than those that aren't involved. Everyone should have a good understanding of what's about to come, but whenever you start finding those people that are going to be working in that thin slice of all of the company, they need to have a better, deeper understanding of what they're about to engage in so that they can fail quicker, learn quicker, and be more productive sooner and give that learning, that feedback. And when I say quicker, sooner, we're still talking months. We're not talking days or weeks. We're still talking like you have to allow for that time for them to settle in, learn it, see what doesn't work, see what fails, adapt, try again, try something new, try something different. You got to grow into it.
Well, okay, so what I'm about to say might sound a little harsh. It might sound almost anti-agile, if you will. And I'm not going to apologize for it, but I am going to add this. So when the decisions are made, and we're talking about, again, we're dealing with people. And when we're dealing with people, we're dealing with emotions. And people's emotions are tied up into their identities. And when decisions are being made at the C-suite to make all these changes, and until that gets socialized, out to the rest of the organization, it's a surprise to some people, and how we handle that has to be, very delicate in some cases, right? Again, that's why human resources is involved. And here's the harsh statement. Again, a lot of people's careers are built on, how they've gotten to where they are and where they thought that they were going in the organization, and all of the performance and incentive programs that are built into their current understanding, and how they've basically patterned their behavior based on what they believe to be success. There has to be some consequences to the people who do not want to get on board, especially in these middle manager layers. Yes, there has to be some consequences. And when I say consequences, make no mistake, I fully believe that everybody has the potential to improve and evolve. Whether you, the individual, believe that or not, I believe that that is true. Now, it's your level of willingness to change will make all the difference. So it's not the organization per se, it's really all up to you, the individual. It all comes down to you. How open-minded are you willing to be? How open to change are you willing to be? How prepared are you to change some of your patterns of behavior? If you're a very command and control manager, how willing are you to embrace a new set of skills and really learn how to become a leader, and let go a little bit, and encourage and empower and entrust, people around you? Those kinds of changes, if you're not willing to make those kinds of changes in this kind of a work environment, that's where I believe the consequences come into play. You should be given every opportunity to improve and evolve and change. And if you decide not to, then maybe it's time for you to move on somewhere else, right? Because you don't fit, you don't belong there, when everyone else around you is trying to improve and change, and you're the one who's not.
Yeah.
So there does have to be some consequences, and the leadership needs to articulate that from the start. It needs to be built into your transition program. Everybody needs to know, so that there are no surprises, and human resources needs to be prepared for some of that conflict that might occur with some people in these manager, director level in the organization.
And I know a good example of that can be when I was working at one of my older companies. Their performance improvement plan was based on how many apps or how many products they could cram out into the ecosystem. It wasn't built around value or quality. It was literally just how much stuff can you put into the world.
Output versus outcome.
Oh, and output versus value, right? It didn't matter if the product that they put out made money. It was, hey, it exists in the ecosystem. People can go use it. However much revenue it's bringing in was inconsequential to the middle management. because their performance plan, their bonus payouts was just based on a number. Did you hit it? Did you meet your quota?
Yeah, so there's a lot of dynamics in there. So there's what I refer to as clock watchers.
Well, but no, what I'm saying is when you're talking about performance changes to a middle manager layer is quotas aren't going to work. You have to start talking. Are you delivering value?
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
totally.
Clock watchers is another good one.
So clock watchers is just another aspect of the change, right? Empowering and trusting your people, setting them up for success. If you're looking over their shoulder, if you're a manager and you're looking over your people's shoulder, and they've got to be at their desk at a certain time, and they've got to be at their desk for a certain amount of hours during the day, and if you walk by and they're not there, well, where were you? What were you doing? Well, I didn't see that on my calendar. Or why don't I have all those meetings on my calendar? Why am I not invited in all of that? Are you really setting your people up for success? Again, that's all part of this conversation and this transition to Agile, and the training and the awareness and the understanding and that whole aspect of change. So many things are involved in this, and it is very difficult. So that's why when you cast that wide net, it's very hard to control a lot of these things. So that's when you take that small vertical slice and you experiment, and you get the right people and the minimum amount of people involved, and you experiment as you go. You'll figure out how to work through a lot of these changes and conflicts, if there are any, as you go.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave the video a like and leave a comment in the section below, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.